I've been hiking alone for years, thinking I knew the forest. I thought I was careful, prepared, smart enough to handle anything. But that October, deep in West Virginia's Monongahela National Forest, I learned just how wrong I could be. The air was crisp, the mid-50s chill brushing against my skin. Overcast calm, perfect for solitude. I had driven hours just to escape the crowds, to feel the wilderness that wasn't tamed by wooden markers or busy trails. About 4 hours into the hike, I reached a gorge steep, jagged, unforgiving. A creek ran at the bottom, and a fallen oak bridged the gap. I hesitated, then examined the log. Solid enough, I told myself. My heartbeat quickened as I stepped onto it. Halfway across, the log groaned under my weight. Every nerve in my body screamed in warning. Don't slip! I could feel the adrenaline surging. The thrill, the danger, I loved it. Or so I thought. Then I heard it, a rhythmic thunk. My blood ran cold. I turned, and there he was, 10 feet away. Older man, scraggly beard, camo jacket, a full-size axe in his hands. Silent. Watching, I yelled at him. Nothing. He heaved the axe at the tree and my stomach plummeted. Then, matter-of-factly, he said, "That's not my problem." I froze. Adrenaline turned to icy fear. He wasn't random. He knew the forest knew me. And in that moment, I realized the woods didn't feel like a friend anymore. I thought I could handle danger. I thought I could think my way out. But the forest had its own rules, and he knew them better than I ever could. I froze, my pulse hammering. Every instinct screamed run, but my legs felt like lead. The man didn't move toward me, yet every swing of his axe at that log made my stomach churn. My mind raced. He knows I crossed there. He knows I'm trapped. I shouted again, louder this time, my voice cracking. "Stop! What are you doing?" No response. Only the rhythmic thunk, thunk, thunk. Panic bubbled, twisting my stomach into knots. I tried to reason to plan, but fear fogged my thoughts. Could I sprint back? Could I climb down the gorge? My phone had no signal. I was utterly alone, and he wasn't leaving. He swung the axe one last time. The log shifted a little. My breath caught. If that breaks, I'm done for. It was desperation now. I yelled, cursed, pleaded, "You can't do this. I just crossed there." Finally, he looked up, his eyes, dark, sunken, unyielding. "That's not my problem," he repeated, almost bored. The calm certainty in his voice made my stomach flip. I felt cornered, powerless, yet a flicker of defiance sparked. I'm not going to let him scare me completely. I scanned the gorge for any escape. My hands were trembling as I leaned on a branch nearby for support. I inched along the edge, heart-racing, sweat dripping down my temples. Every step was a gamble. Every snap of a twig sounded like a gunshot. I thought I had outsmarted the forest before, but this was something else. Something that didn't just want to scare me, it wanted control. My legs shook as I reached the far side of the gorge, but the relief was fleeting. The log held barely, yet I could see the cracks where his axe had bitten. My chest heaved, lungs, burning heart hammering against my rib cage. I wanted to breathe, but the forest felt alive, watching me. Every shadow between the trees seemed heavier, darker. The wind whispered through the leaves like a warning. I kept scanning, imagining movement behind every branch. My mind screamed at me. Something is here. Something you can't see. I stumbled forward, desperate to get some distance between us. My eyes caught strange carvings on nearby trees, deep gauges forming patterns I couldn't place. Twisted, rusted objects hung from branches and bones, small, unnerving, arranged in a precise and deliberate pattern. A fire pit sat in the clearing, but the smoke thick black, hovering 6 feet above the ground, as if mocking gravity itself. I froze. My stomach churned. What is this? Who are they? A shiver crawled down my spine, a deep dread unlike anything I'd felt before I wanted to turn around. But instinct screamed, move forward. My feet carried me toward the unknown. Each step heavy, deliberate, trying not to make noise. But the forest wasn't just silent. It was watching, listening, waiting. I thought the Axeman was the worst part of this hike. I thought I'd escaped danger. But something else lingered. Unseen, patient, and far older than any man. And I was walking straight into it. I finally stumbled out of that thick forest as the last slivers of sunlight disappeared behind the horizon. My legs shook, my chest heaving, and my mind refused to calm. Every rustle, every whisper of the wind made me jump. The adrenaline hadn't left me. It had settled into something heavier, fear. And even hours later, sitting in my car with the heater blasting, I could not seem to get the hovering smoke, the carvings, and that eerie arrangement of bones and other objects out of my mind. It wasn't just fear. It was awe-chilling respect for something unseen, something ancient, controlling. I tried to rationalize it. Wolves scattered by, what? Smoke that hovered impossibly? Symbols carved into the trees, objects arranged like some form of ritual. Nothing made any sense. Still, it left a mark I couldn't erase. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, the images of the clearing flashed before my eyes, and I felt the weight of invisible eyes watching me. The forest wasn't just trees and shadows. It had memory, didn't forgive, didn't forget. I convinced myself to move on, to hike elsewhere. But months later, I found myself on another trail miles from any trailhead and thought I was ready. I wasn't. I thought that would be the scariest hike of my life. But I was wrong months later. On a trail in northern, something far more terrifying was waiting, something that would haunt me in ways I couldn't imagine. I thought I had learned my lesson from the first hike, but months later, I found myself on a trail in northern Minnesota. Miles off any marked path, the forest was thick, almost smothering, the kind of place where silence isn't just quiet, it feels alive. I'd been hiking for hours, reveling in the solitude, when a creeping unease settled into my chest. It was small at first, a rustle behind me. The snap of a twig. I told myself it was deer, maybe a fox. But the sounds didn't behave naturally. Every time I stopped, they stopped. Every time I moved, they followed. My heartbeat picked up. Something is watching me. The sun was still high, but shadows here seemed heavier. My pack felt heavier, every movement of mine cautious, almost hesitant. Then I saw it. A flash of movement between the trees. Not a deer, not a fox, a figure. Tall, gaunt, lurking just out of clear view, disappearing every time I turned my head. I froze. My stomach churned. I'm not alone. I debated turning back, but my pride and stubbornness pushed me forward. With each step, I pressed deeper into the woods, and every rustle behind me grew louder, more deliberate. I thought the figure was alone, harmless. But by the time I realized there were more of them, watching, waiting, I knew this hike wouldn't end in the way I had planned. My steps slowed, every nerve screaming, as I tried to convince myself it was nothing. But the forest had its own rhythm, and I was out of sync. Leaves rustled behind me in irregular patterns, soft at first, then sharper, deliberate, like someone or something was mirroring my every move. My chest tightened. I am being followed. I stopped and held my breath, straining for the faintest sound. Silence, then a snap. My head whipped sideways. Shadows shifted between the trees. Nothing solid, just shapes. Shapes that didn't belong. My heart raced as I considered running. If I moved too quickly, I might make a noise and alert them to my presence. If I stay, they might get closer. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to climb a tree, to hide, to scream, to do something. But I was rooted, caught between terror and disbelief. The figure appeared again, just a glimpse. A lanky silhouette, unnaturally still. I realized with a jolt it wasn't alone. Another figure emerged further left, to mirror the first, moving in silence, stalking. My mind was racing, conjuring every horror movie I'd ever watched, every true story I'd ever read. Nothing prepared me for this. The forest had become a trap, each tree a witness, each shadow a threat. My fingers clenched the straps of my packed knuckles white, and I forced myself forward, step by trembling step. I thought keeping my distance was enough. I thought I could outsmart them, but as the sun dipped lower, I realized I was walking straight into a nightmare I couldn't escape. I quickened my pace, trying to convince myself it was just the wind, just my imagination. But the forest had other plans. Twigs snapped in rhythm with my steps, and shadows flitted across my vision, teasing me at the edges of sight. Every time I turned, there was nothing. And yet, I could feel them, watching, waiting. My heart sounded in my chest like a pounding drum. Adrenaline stormed my veins, shaking my hands and knotting my stomach. I wanted to run, to sprint blindly, but my feet felt heavy, reluctant, as if the forest itself was binding me. The figures moved with an unnerving, calculated precision, silent, patient, almost ritualistic. I looked back and stood still. 3 of them now perfectly spaced, moving in such a manner that spoke volumes of not just following, but hunting. I swallowed hard, whispering to myself, stay calm, stay calm. But the rational voice in my mind was drowned out by a chorus of primal fear. My options felt non-existent. Climb, hide, fight. Each sounded a little more dangerous than the last. My pack dragged at me, a cruel reminder that I was trapped, weighed down both physically and mentally. I pushed forward, zigzagging between gnarled trees, praying for higher ground or a way out. My breathing was ragged, each inhale sharp, each exhale trembling. Then I heard it. A low guttural sound, not human, not animal. The sound rolled through the trees, vibrating the ground, echoing in my chest. It surrounded me, pressing in, as if the forest itself had come alive. I thought the figures were human. I thought I could escape. But the forest had darker secrets, and I was about to stumble into one I wasn't ready to face. My legs were burning, my lungs screaming for air, but I couldn't stop. Every step felt like running through quicksand, each breath sharp and ragged. There were guttural noises behind me, louder now, echoing and twisting, almost laughing. My stomach churned with a sick realization that they weren't just stalking me. They were orchestrating this, herding me deeper into the forest. Then I stumbled into a small clearing, moonlight, barely piercing the thick canopy. And I froze. There they were, all 3 standing perfectly still, almost statuesque, watching me. Their eyes, sunken dark, filled with something primal. I realized then that no words could describe the fear gripping me. My mind screamed, run, run, run. Instinct kicked in. I ran, zigzagging between trees, tripping over roots, scratching my arms, desperate for any getaway. One of them lunged, and I barely dove to the side as a heavy pipe swung past me, clanging against a tree. My heart nearly stopped. I scrambled, adrenaline surging, sweat stinging my eye. The branches tore at my clothes, the underbrush catching my boots, but I could not stop. Behind low growls, snapping of branches, and the thud of heavy footsteps chased me unrelentingly. It was as if the very forest conspired against me. Finally, a glimmer of moonlight showed a fallen tree lower than it had been earlier. I mounted it without reflection, balancing precariously, praying it held. My hands were shaking violently, with every second an eternity. I thought escaping the Axeman was terrifying. But nothing had prepared me for this nightmarish chase, and I was only halfway through the horrors waiting in these woods. I teetered on the fallen tree, my hands shaking and sweat stinging my eyes. My heart pounded in my chest like a war drum echoing through the forest. The three figures came closer behind me, silent as ghosts in the thin moonlight, their shadows stretching long and sinister. Every muscle screamed to run. But the gap was narrow, the drop unforgiving. One of them dove again, and I barely twisted out of the way, scraping my leg on jagged bark. Pain shot through me, but I couldn't stop. It was as if the forest was alive, watching, pressing in. Branches tore at my jacket. Roots caught my boots, but I forced my body forward, desperate to survive. I could hear them now. Soft, calculated steps, almost taunting. My breath came in sharp gasps. I can't die here. Not like this. Not now. Adrenaline surged, blinding every ache, every fear. I leapt off the fallen tree, hit the ground, hard, rolling instinctively. My pack burst open, scattering supplies, but I didn't care. I bolted. The underbrush whipped against me as I zigzagged toward the faint light of a faraway clearing. A shriek echoed from behind, then a low guttural growl, and then silence. My lungs burned, my body screamed, but I dared to look back. The figures had stopped at the edge of the trees, motionless, watching, as if they had decided I'd survived. For now, I managed to get out alive. But the memory of their eyes, their silent precision, and the forest itself still haunts me. I thought I knew what fear was, but Story 3 would question everything I thought I knew. I thought I'd seen the worst the wilderness could throw at me. I was wrong. Months later, I found myself planning a solo hike in the remote Blue Ridge Mountains, craving solitude, craving the untouched wilderness. What I didn't realize was that solitude comes with a price. The trail was quiet, almost unnaturally so. Birds were silent, the wind still. Even the distant babble of a creek sounded hollow. I told myself it was normal, just the early morning calm, but the knot in my stomach tightened with every step. The forest had a different energy here, older and darker, almost sentient. A few hours in, I noticed something strange. The trail markers were irregular. Not missing, not worn, just wrong. They pointed in directions that didn't make sense. I shook it off, blaming fatigue, but deep down, a creeping unease settled over me. I'm not supposed to be here alone, I thought. Then I heard it, a faint crunch of leaves behind me. Not once, not twice, but consistent, deliberate, matching my pace. I froze, heart hammering, scanning the shadows between trees. Something was following me. I couldn't see it, but I could feel its eyes on me, heavy, unblinking, patient. I tried to accelerate, telling myself that it was an animal, maybe a hiker, but instinct screamed danger. The forest wasn't natural here. Every rustle, every whisper told me that whatever was out there wasn't just observing, it was hunting. I thought I was experienced, prepared. But nothing in my years of hiking had prepared me for the horrors that were waiting deeper in this untouched wilderness. I forced my legs to move, to continue on in a semblance of calm, while inside every fiber screamed otherwise. The forest fell silent then, uncannily, so as if it was holding its breath, waiting for me to make some wrong move. Each step I took echoed a faint rustling behind me, patient and deliberate. I froze, holding my breath as I tried to pinpoint it. Nothing. Just the shadows between trees shifting softly, almost unnaturally. I could feel eyes on me, and my stomach knotted. They know I'm here. They're watching. Every instinct told me to flee, yet my legs refused to respond with enough speed. Then I saw it, a flicker of movement, tall, thin, slipping between the trunks. Not human yet in its posture. It was eerily familiar somehow. I swallowed hard, whispering to myself, "It's a person, it has to be." But something in the way it moved, silent and precise, protested my mind. I zigzagged between trees, trying to shake it off. But with every step, there were more noises behind me. Branches snapped, leaves rustled, and the low hiss or exhaled breath now and then sent my pulse racing. My mind was in a spiral. Should I climb? Should I hide? Should I confront it? All choices sounded to me like death sentences. I thought I knew fear. Thought I could safely navigate the wilderness. The forest had other ideas, and I was about to face a nightmare unlike anything I had survived before. My heart was pounding in my ears as I pushed through the dense underbrush, every step a battle against roots, rocks, and sheer exhaustion. The rustling behind me had grown louder, more deliberate, synchronized with my frantic pace. My breath came in ragged gasps, my chest heaving. I could feel their presence closing in, cold and relentless. I stumbled into a small clearing, the pale light of late afternoon struggling through the thick canopy, and there they were, two figures standing motionless, perfectly framed by the trees watching. Sunken eyes, long limbs, and a patience that made my skin crawl. I froze paralyzed as an instinctive terror rooted me to the ground. A twig snapped beneath my foot and they moved. Silently, swiftly. Closer, panic surged and I bolted. Every branch whipped across my face, every root threatened to trip me. But I forced my legs to keep going. Behind me, a guttural hiss echoed, sending shivers down my spine. I stumbled and fell. Hit the ground, skinning my hands and knees. Pain flared, but I couldn't stop now. Scrambling to my feet, I saw a narrow ridge going up. Desperation drove me upward, each step dangerous, every movement a gamble against gravity. I finally reached the top and dared to look behind me. The figures had stopped at the edge of the clearing, their black forms still unblinking, as if marking their victory or warning me. My chest heaved, and I sank to my knees, trembling. I came out alive, but the shadow of that forest still clings to my mind. And that's the point when I understood. Some trails should not be trodden, and some terrors never leave. I collapsed at the edge of the trail, my legs trembling, sweat drenched through my clothes, heart still hammering like a drum. The forest behind me had returned to an eerie quiet, almost peaceful. But I knew better. I could still feel those unblinking dark eyes watching from the shadows, a reminder that I had trespassed somewhere I shouldn't have. My hands shook as I fumbled for my phone, praying for signal. When it finally connected, I called a friend, my voice barely above a whisper. How could I explain it? They wouldn't understand. They couldn't. Some things in the wilderness aren't meant for words, and the shadows, the sounds, the suffocating presence that lingers long after the danger has passed. Driving home, every detail replayed in my head. The stalking figures, the crunch of leaves behind me, the impossibly still forest, and the narrow ridge on which I had gambled my life. It's not just what you see that's fear, it's what you feel deep in your gut when your mind won't rest during those quiet moments. The forest doesn't just test you, it shapes you, reminding you of how fragile you are. I've learned something important. Respect the wilderness. Experience and preparation can only take you so far. There are some places that keep secrets no map or guide can prepare you for. Forces that don't forgive mistakes and horrors that don't vanish when you leave. And yet surviving teaches you something too. Courage, resilience, and the stark realization that life is fragile, but precious. If you want to hear more true horror stories that will haunt you for long after the video is finished, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Believe me, you don't want to miss the next journey into the unknown. The woods are waiting, and some nightmares are far from over.